Newt Gingrich.
Well, if we're debating a crisis, it's making bigger headlines every day.
And in these bigger headlines, what's President Obama doing about it today? Visiting the Baseball Hall of Fame and attending a fundraiser in Chicago. So in his absence, the debate starts right now.
Tonight on Crossfire, getting control of the VA scandal. The revelations keep coming.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
The pressure keeps building.
We've not just let them down, we've let them die. This is awful stuff.
On the left, Stephanie Cutter. On the right, Newt Gingrich. In the Crossfire, Representative Joe Crowley, a New York Democrat, and Representative Tom Cole, an Oklahoma Republican. Is Washington playing scandal politics or looking for solutions? Tonight on Crossfire.
Welcome to Crossfire. I'm Newt Gingrich on the right.
And I'm Stephanie Cutter on the left. In the Crossfire tonight, congressmen from both parties. Veterans Affairs Secretary Eric Shinseki was on Capitol Hill today briefing lawmakers on the investigation into reports of delayed care and cover-ups. Shinseki says he hasn't offered to resign, and he's just released a message to the nation's veterans, saying if any of the allegations are true, quote, we will act. But that hasn't stopped some Republicans from rushing to judgment and trying to score cheap political points. Newt. I'd suggest they follow the lead of Speaker John Boehner. Today, in effect, he told everyone to chill out.
This isn't about the secretary. It's about the entire system underneath him. And so I don't want people to get confused about what the shiny ball is here. The shiny ball is a systemic failure of this agency.
This isn't about President Obama or cheap political shots. This isn't about Secretary Shinseki. It's about fixing a system that for decades has been failing men and women who put their lives on the line for our country. Some of the backlog problems we're discussing today go back more than 20 years, which means we all bear responsibility. So political grandstanding is unacceptable, and Republicans should be called on it. Newt?
Well, as Speaker Boehner said, we are going to, in fact, follow the shining ball tonight in the Crossfire tonight. New York Congressman Joe Crowley, who's a member of the House Democratic Leadership Team, and Oklahoma Republican Congressman Tom Cole. And we are delighted to have you. But let me start with the challenge that the president has. You know, he is up at Cooperstown, and maybe at the Hall of Fame he'll learn a little bit about scoring runs and hitting the ball, because today a leading Democratic columnist described him as President Passive. And if you saw yesterday's press conference, and a little bit of what Shinseki said today, which is, after all of this stuff, gee, if we find something, we will act. Aren't you a little concerned at the pace, at how far behind the news media the administration has been in trying to understand the scandal?
I think the president is acting appropriately. He has dispatched his Deputy White House Chief of Staff, Rob Neighbors, to Arizona to demonstrate his personal involvement in getting to the root of this problem, finding out what took place, what happened, and as he said, let the chips fall where they may, and wherever this leads, action will be taken, whether it's criminal action that needs to be taken, legislative action that needs to be taken, that I think we really do need to address, and that is the fact that we have almost 2 million more men and women who have served their country, who have come back to the United States, who need help and assistance to the VA, and we, the Congress, need to make sure that they have every resource they possibly need to take care of those men and women coming home.
Congressman Cole, I just want to go back for 1 second to that political grandstanding that Newt was discussing and actually took some shots on. And take a look at Senator Thune, who said this.
This VA issue is a national embarrassment, and the president's response to it is an embarrassment.
But we just heard Speaker Boehner say this isn't about the president, this isn't about Shinseki. We need to keep our eye on the ball, basically. So where do you stand? Do you stand with, with making these political pot shots, or do you stand with Speaker Boehner, where everybody should just remain focused on this investigation so that we can actually fix the problem?
Well, I think the Speaker also was pretty emphatic. Look, we have potential criminal wrongdoing here. We have people that have died. And the administration's been there for 5 years. 5 years. And this actually isn't a congressional problem. When President Bush was president, we increased funding by about 100% to veterans. And we've continued to do that under President Obama. In other words, Congress will write the check, Republican or Democrat. That's actually never been a flashpoint. We just added $1.8 billion more to the budget than what we passed in the House a couple weeks ago. This is a failure of administrative oversight. And look, I'm a big admirer of General Shinseki. I served on House Armed Services Committee when he was Army Chief of Staff. This guy that left a piece of himself in Vietnam fighting for this country. This is a guy that was right about Iraq. So I have a lot of admiration. But 5 years, and we're now finding what looks like systemic criminal.
Well,
you got to hold somebody
we got to
to
get to the bottom of this.
Well,
I mean,
look,
there's an investigation in place.
When you're padding,
There's also some suggestion this goes back beyond the 5 years that President Obama has been in place. So, and to say that this is not a congressional issue, it certainly is a congressional issue as to whether or not we're giving the resources to the VA to carry out the mandate that Congress has set for them, and that is to take care of the men and women who come back, who will leave a piece to them, whether it's physical or mentally, back in the country where they've served. And I think I would disagree with the sense that if we're giving them enough money, why are these backlogs taking place? Why is it 125 days?
Well, we've been giving them the money they asked for. That's the point. And if
that's not exactly true.
That actually is exactly true. You don't increase an agency by 100% under one president and continue on essentially the same clip. The idea, again, I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't do more. If the answer came back, we need more, I think the Congress in the bipartisan sense would do it.
Well, wait a second. You guys yesterday had a bipartisan vote. You two voted together that said that Shinseki will now have the authority to fire 435 senior executives. Now, that would certainly imply that prior to yesterday, he didn't have that. And the senator, of course, is leaving today without having picked this up. But certainly there seems to be some belief that there's a structural problem as well as a financial problem, and that the structure may well be incapable in its current form. Now, I mean, do you expect a significant, are you comfortable if a significant number of those 435 don't have their jobs at the end of the summer?
What I'm comfortable in, Newt, is that the men and women who deserve the care that they need get that care. No matter whether you fire folks or not, at the end of the day, if it doesn't get the men and women who need their help that they need, then you're really not accomplishing anything. Why I voted for the bill was to give the authority to the Secretary to make the changes that he thinks he needs to make in order to make it a more effective and more efficient VA and get the help to the people that need it.
Let me give you a specific example. Senator Heller was here from Nevada last night. He says that the head of the Reno VA, who, by the way, is a layer below the ones who could be fired, refuses to answer any call by members of the delegation. Now, isn't there some point at which there ought to be some ability to reassert control?
There's no question that something went wrong here. There's no doubt about it. Even the president said that. General Shinseki has said that. And we want to get to the root of this. I think calling for heads to roll without knowing who's responsible. And I tell you this, if there was criminal activity, they need to face criminal charges.
And Secretary Shinseki did send out a message to veterans tonight on the eve of Memorial Day, and he repeated the details of the investigation that's underway. 200 senior members of the VA are going through every single major facility. They're independent of these facilities to get to the bottom of what's going on so that they can take action to fix it. Are you satisfied with that?
I think it's a step in the right direction, but look, I also have to look at, this is the 5th year. This is the 5th year. And I don't think, at least I don't recall, that the authority we gave General Shinseki has been asked for before. This is actually a congressional initiative to, let's give you some more tools.
Well, where's congressional oversight?
Well,
You've been there for 5 years. This problem goes way back. Where's congressional oversight?
There's a lot of congressional oversight. But, you know, you only can deal with the information you're given by an agency that's now producing statistics that we know aren't true. Well, I think you have to hold people in the agency accountable. I'm glad we gave them the tool. Glad we did that in a bipartisan fashion. But politically, I think it's going to be very hard to sustain the current leadership that's been there for 5 years and didn't discover the problem, is now reacting after the fact.
Look, and to be clear for a second, a lot of the stuff we're unearthing is about lying. So when you have oversight with people who are lying, it's a little tricky.
But isn't that the same? You're making the point on both the administration's point and Congress's point then. If somebody is lying, then there's no possible way for anybody to have had advance warning on this. But there are some facts here that we need to remember. Congressman Crowley, you talked about the 2 million people added to the system just in the last couple of years. That's a significant need in resources to deal with the health care.
But let me offer a little bit different view of this, which is, I think, a real secret here in Washington, which causes massive problems at every federal agency, not just the Veterans Administration. Next, I will tell you what it is. Welcome back. Now, the answer to our Crossfire quiz. Veterans Affairs has the largest workforce, accounting for 15% of all federal civilian employees. Next comes the Army, the Navy, Homeland Security, and the Air Force. But no matter which agency you work for, Washington's real secret is that Congress has piled up so many rules and so many regulations, it is nearly impossible to do anything innovative. Even if the people at Google and Facebook took over Veterans Affairs, they could not clean up the information mess. And if you won't take my word for it, listen to this man. You may have heard he had a few problems setting up a federal website for his favorite project.
How we purchase technology in the federal government is cumbersome, complicated, and outdated. You know, you're going through, 40 pages of specs and this and that and the other, and there are all kinds of laws involved. And it makes it more difficult.
I agree with President Obama. If Congress really wants to fix the Veterans Administration, it needs to change the law about buying information technology. And that is Congress's job, not the President's or Secretary Shinseki. In the Crossfire tonight, Congressman Joe Crowley and Tom Cole. And I want to share, I was very struck with this. There was a poll today I want to put up just for a second, Congressman Crowley, that asked the question, who do you blame most? And I was fascinated when I saw it because it has Secretary Shinseki and the national VA, the local VA hospitals, or President Obama. It didn't have the Congress. And it struck me, and again, I'm a big, as you know, Speaker of the House, I deeply believe in this, but in all fairness, when you look at the systemic changes, and you look at this universal problem with information technology, doesn't Congress need to take a really big bite at trying to figure out how to fix these things on a big scale?
I think looking for the rainbow here, because it's a dark period right now. People have died because of denial of care where they ought to have gotten that care. And we need to find out why that happened. But at the end of the day, how can we make the system a better system? That's what it's about. Getting the men and women who deserve that system to be delivering the health care that they deserve is what it's about. And in the end, we need to find a way to simplify it, make it work in more efficient ways. And I think that's something the Democrats and Republicans will both agree upon, that this is not about politics. This ought to be about getting these men and women who come, adding to this, the fact that you now take for granted, if you were exposed in Vietnam to Agent Orange, you come with certain predisposed notions about how to take care of them. That's also adding to this. But we have to give them the resources, get them the doctors, the real nurses that they need to take care of these folks.
There's another piece of this poll, Congressman Cole, that I want to point out. They did poll some veterans, and here's what veterans said the problem at the VA hospitals are. Not having adequate resources, 44%. Not properly managing those resources, 43%. So it's pretty even in terms of resources and reform. Do you agree with that?
Actually, I do. Although, again, I'd point out the resources here have actually grown much faster than almost any other area of government. They've done it under Republican and Democratic president alike. They've done it in Republican and Democratic Congresses alike. So I think getting a handle on this thing in an executive sense is really critical. I think Congress is prepared to do its part in oversight, and we clearly, again, the tools that Secretary Shinseki just got were given to him by the Congress. I mean, this is something, okay, we want you to have this.
But one piece of follow-up on that. The VA makes a budget request every year. The House underfunded that budget request, $50 million for information technology and $368 million for services. So that's 0 for 2. Go back to the Newt's baseball analogy. You're 0 for 2. How, they have an increased demand because of the 2 million vets that have been brought into the system.
Yes and no. Look,
and you're
the number of veterans
cutting their funding request by hundreds of millions.
Increasing, quite frankly. What's happening here, and it's actually paradoxical, the VA has expanded. We've put enough money in that more people that were eligible are using it now, which is a good thing. but it does create an administrative problem in terms of catch-up. It's not like there's more veterans. There are more people using it because the facilities in many cases
Yes.
are better than they
2
were.
million more.
And again, that's, well, believe me, I understand. That's about 7 million, about 25 million in terms of veterans populations and people that actually use it. But again, Congress has been willing to do this. Presidents have been willing to do this. But there are whole layers of protection for the bureaucracy. There are whole impediments here that, frankly, largely Democratic built in many cases from a labor standpoint that need to be gotten out of the way.
What about the funding?
We're winding down 2 wars. I mean, it's not as if these people aren't coming home. They are coming home, and thankfully so. They're going to need additional help. People who have been exposed to roadside bombs and have traumatic brain injuries and have been exposed to things that none of us, thankfully, will ever be exposed to. They're going to need help. And that pressure is being brought to bear on a system that right now had got the biggest increase since the GI Bill under a Democratic Congress. We need to continue that and make sure they have every resource they need.
But let me give you an example of why I talked about reform. We've spent $2.1 billion in the Defense Department on health information technology and failed totally. They spent $1.2 billion trying to fix the VA Defense Department interface and announced in February they were giving up because they just couldn't figure it out now. It takes 183 days to transfer from the Defense Department to the VA. It takes 11 seconds to get money out of your ATM. I mean, this is why I can't tell you if we have enough people or not enough people because the system is so totally screwed up right now.
And it may not be about, it may not just be about money. I mean, I'll be willing to say that.
I think it's about
I'll tell you, I have a bill that would require any doctor that when a person comes in, they ask this one question: have you ever served in our nation's military? Because some vets don't want to go to the VA for whatever reason. That one question in and of itself can direct the doctor towards diagnosing what that problem may be and really saving us all money and saving and having a better system. One little simple bill. So I think there are things we can do to help make it a better system, but I think getting bogged down in the politics and the blame game isn't going to help anyone.
I actually don't think we are bogged down in the politics.
I don't know. If you look at what's going on here,
you have Democrats calling for Shinseki. It's not like this has been a Republican. There are a lot of members, and you know, I listening to John Barrow earlier today talking about some of his constituents that he think had died as a result of this. You know, you're going to be pretty upset. So making this into a Republican witch hunt, it's just not. You have bipartisan outrage about what's happened. You have an administration that, frankly, has been sort of caught napping here. This came up on them. They didn't see it. We've been willing to write checks. So, again, I think at some point, and look, I don't think this is General Shinseki, but clearly, you know, we've got a whole layer of people between him and the truth.
Tom, I
ought to get fired.
didn't say it was a partisan issue. I'm saying calling for the Secretary's resignation and thinking that's going to solve the problem. It's not.
I agree with you.
And that's the point I'm making. I'm not Democrat or Republican.
So we need to see
We're
this
both
investigation through. Okay, stay here. We want you at home to weigh in on today's fireback question. Who do you blame most for the VA scandal? We've added that missing category. Tweet Shinseki, Obama, or Congress. We'll have the results after the break. We also have the outrages of the day. I'm outraged at a Florida Republican who thinks a good education will make your child gay. Welcome back to Crossfire. Now it's time for our outrages of the day. Experts and teachers in 44 states plus Washington, D.C. have come up with a set of standards that are supposed to ensure students are prepared for college entry-level careers or job training programs. It's called Common Core. And whether or not you agree with it, I'm outraged by a Florida state lawmaker's objection to it. Republican Charles Van Zandt says the people implementing Common Core have a hidden agenda to, quote, attract every one of your children to become as homosexual as they possibly can, end quote. If a better education and a basic intelligence is what makes you gay, then this guy has nothing to worry about. Mr. Van Zandt, you are safely heterosexual.
I'm talking about a different kind of safety. I'm outraged because Obamacare's so-called glitches aren't limited to computers. Federal bureaucrats would not let a South Carolina woman get the medicine she needs because their website kept telling them she's a man. Shelby Higdon says she called healthcare.gov 8 times and talked to what she believes were real people. And she called the insurance company and talked to what she is sure were real people because they started hanging up on her. She could not get her medicine for 3 weeks because they kept saying she was a man. Finally, she called a TV station which called the bureaucrats who claim They've now fixed the problem with Obamacare. So you don't have to be a veteran to be abused by bureaucrats.
Let's check on our fireback results. Who do you blame most for the VA scandal? We've added the missing category: tweet Shinseki, Obama, or Congress. Right now, 9% of you say Shinseki, 38% say Obama, and 53% say Congress.
Hardly a surprise, but it does reveal why the president attacks Congress anytime something goes wrong in his administration, because we're the easy guys to kick around. The reality is here, 2 administrations have gotten almost everything they requested in terms of dollars from Congress. Congress actually preemptively gave this week additional tools on a bipartisan basis, by the way. This is an executive failure of the first magnitude. Probably was under Bush, certainly is under this president, and frankly, I think at the end of the day, that's the way it'll play out politically.
I think the Congress has a role to play here. Obviously, I'm not totally shocked by the results. We've been so focused on make-believe crises like the IRS scandal and Benghazi. Here's something we really should be delving into in terms of our oversight responsibilities, and Congress has failed in this particular case.